What's up, everyone? Today we're taking a look at the topic America becomes a global power. We're going to look at why America becomes a global power, what motivated some individuals to want to increase America's role in the world. So let's get started. So important idea number one, prior to the 1890s, most U.S. territorial expansion largely occurred within the continent of North America. And if you take a look at this map, you could see that that conquest, that expansion of North America took a long time and happened at the expense of a lot of different people and countries. Some highlights: Louisiana Purchase in 1803, Monroe Doctrine, we're trying to limit Europe's influence in the Western Hemisphere, the Indian Removal Act, where we're forcing Native people like the Cherokee out of their land, the Mexican-American War, remember the idea of manifest destiny, this belief that God wanted us to conquer the continent, and you have a whole series of Indian Wars from 1860 to 1890. Now what happens in the 1890s is there's a transformation, because the 1890s marks a turning point in U.S. history. The United States is becoming a global power. The other big idea is this: imperialists cited economic opportunities, racial theories, competition with European empires, and the perception in the 1890s that the Western frontier was closed to argue for this expansion. So let's take a look at that section in the red, the closing of the frontier. What was this idea that the perception that the frontier was in fact closed, that the frontier had ended?
This is the end.
Well, in 1893, a historian by the name of Frederick Jackson Turner published The Significance of the Frontier in American History. And in this piece, he argues the 1890 census claimed that the frontier had ended or was closed. In fact, the superintendent of the census had said there was no longer a visible frontier out in the West. In that same year, 1890, Wounded Knee marked the end of the major Indian Wars. You can see the site of the battle right there. Now, in Jackson's essay, he talks about the importance of the frontier in American history. He doesn't really value the resistance of the native people to Anglo colonization, doesn't talk much about race or class, but Jackson lays down this idea that the frontier is closed, this special place is no longer here. Now, advocates of expansion take these ideas and say, look, if the frontier is closed, the only logical source for American expansion is now going to be abroad. We're going to have to go international. Back to the big idea. Imperialists cited economic opportunities, racial theories, competition with European empires to argue that Americans were destined to expand their culture and institutions to peoples around the globe. And what you're going to see is, starting really with these individuals.
Bring 'em out, hey! Bring 'em out, yeah!
You're going to have a dramatic increase in America's involvement in the world. And all of these presidents are going to do their own things when it comes to the realm of foreign policy. It's not always going to be the same, but they're all going to play a much more active role in world affairs. So what was the rationale for America's increased involvement? Many imperialists cited economic opportunities as a justification for increased involvement of the United States in world affairs. They wanted to get that money right.
La 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 la, wait till I get my money right.
And what this means is you want to open up markets abroad. You want to be able to have new markets for all these goods being produced by the Industrial Revolution, all these manufactured goods, as well as the agricultural goods that are being made much more efficiently because of all the new technology. You want to have access to cheap raw materials, and many foreign countries would be able to provide this, and it would help fuel the Industrial Revolution. Many people felt that when there were economic downturns, such as the Panic of 1893, that if we had these foreign markets to provide raw materials and as places to trade, we would get out of these economic downturns much quicker than if we didn't have them. Another motive of American expansion and perhaps imperialism was political.
Everybody wants to the world.
Another reason for American expansion is competition with European empires. And the big ones are England, Germany, France, Russia, but you also have Japan on the rise. They're already acquiring colonies and or influence in places like Asia and Africa. And if the United States wanted to be a world power and not a second-rate nation, they had to jump into this colonial competition. And a great example can be seen in Asia. And once again, these different countries, you have the French controlling Southeast Asia, Spain is in the Philippines up until at least the 1898, 1899, and of course the British are in India. And if the United States wants to play a role, they're going to need to compete. And you're going to really see this in China, where all these different countries are carving up spheres of influences, and the United States is eventually going to introduce its open door policy. There were also strategic reasons why some Americans advocated for expansion and or imperialistic policies. And one of the things that was happening is America's Navy was extremely weak, pathetic, and not very impressive. And the United States, as it expands throughout this period, is largely kind of getting areas that are islands because you want to be close to foreign markets such as China. And so islands like the Philippines or Cuba or Hawaii are very attractive because they could serve as refueling stations for ships and naval bases to protect American interest abroad. And there was a guy in 1890 who says you need to have a powerful navy. And that guy was Alfred T. Mahan, who wrote The Influence of Sea Power Upon History. And he basically argued that in order to secure foreign markets and to become a world power, you needed to have a modern, powerful navy and acquire naval bases. And you're going to see, so it's economic as well as military and strategic reasons why having a powerful navy is important. And you're going to see America's involvement in places like Cuba, Panama, and Hawaii are all very much influenced by these strategic or military concerns and the words of people like Alfred T. Mahan. Now, fun little fact, that song you just heard, In the Navy, sung by the Village People, most people don't know, Alfred T. Mahan was the secret seventh member. And right there you could see some of the examples that I just mentioned. In Cuba you have Guantanamo Bay, Hawaii Pearl Harbor, and of course Panama, the building of the Panama Canal, largely influenced by the vision of Theodore Roosevelt's administration. So these are some strategic reasons for American expansion. Finally, you also have ideological reasons. This idea of survival of the fittest. Some advocates of expansion took Charles Darwin's concept of survival of the fittest and applied it to international affairs. Remember, Darwin in his Origin of Species talked about evolution and the survival of the fittest in terms of species and evolution. They took it and applied it to the international community. And this idea basically held that you must colonize other lands to spread superior civilization and or Christianity. So you got to bring democracy. You have to uplift these inferior people. And this was a reason and a justification for American expansion. And you could see very much in the political cartoons of the time, Uncle Sam being depicted as the teacher or the one who's uplifting those inferior, backwards countries that needed Uncle Sam, that needed America to bring the blessings of liberty and civilization to them. You also have individuals such as this Reverend. Take me to church, Reverend Josiah Strong. He wrote Our Country in 1885, and he basically said Anglo-Saxons were a superior race, and he very much advocated Christian missionary work. Christians should go, this idea of the white man's burden, we should uplift those people who are inferior by bringing them Christianity, because the Anglo-Saxon, the Protestant Anglo-Saxon people were the superior ones. And you can very much see these ideas being depicted in this illustration right there. That's going to do it for the breakdown of why America expanded its role in international affairs, the justifications behind it. Hope you learned a whole lot. If you haven't already done so, make sure you subscribe, click like, and tell all your friends to check out the channel. Have a beautiful day. Peace.